Out there, rotoscouts basketball fans. What's going on, gang? Happy Monday. It's not really a thing that people say. It is Monday. I don't know. Not Garfield's day. Not really my favorite day of the week, but I'm not a big anti-Monday person. Especially, doing what I do now. It's not like I get up and go to an office or anything, so it's not exactly a regular kind of Monday. I also got like pet hair on top of my head as usual. But yeah, Monday, kind of every day, the same these days. But I was never Monday was never that brutal. I think Tuesday was always kind of like, eh. Thursday's not bad because you're already you're basically at the start of the weekend on Thursday night. Wednesdays kind of suck. That's why I always had the poker game on Wednesdays. Kind of picked up the Wednesday evening, picked up the middle of the week a little bit. But we're starting the week off pretty good little slate, little four-gamer, but we've got a ton of value. Stephen Leibowitz is here. Tuesday has no feel, it's just there. I agree with that. For sure. That's why I feel like, people try and force like Taco Tuesday and stuff like that. And it's like, tacos are great any night. But I feel like people try to cram things into Tuesday and it just hasn't really worked out. Hasn't really found its niche yet. Cujo's here. Hope everyone's today is going well. Hope yours is too, buddy. Good start to the week for everybody, hopefully. Hopefully everybody had good weekends. I did very little this weekend. Had a little flurry of activity over the last few days. Went down to my parents, went to a concert, something else in there. Hung out with my buddy Charlie on Wednesday. That's a usual routine. But yeah, this weekend just kind of took it very, very easy. If you were around Discord, you saw me just hanging out, talking sports, getting things updated. Played just 2 NBA lineups yesterday. Wasn't looking to play. I was just want to, since I was doing the projections, I'll throw in a couple just for fun. Ended up cashing both of them. Not that I'm looking to, as we talk about, we're always looking to win, not cash necessarily. But I was happy with the cash because they both had Jonathan Isaac with 1 point from him in the lineups. They would have, had he not played whatever minute and a half that he played before leaving the game, put up a reasonable 20, something like that. Could have been a good little day with those 2 lineups, but I'll take the cash in a 8 versus 9 kind of a situation. Phil's here. What's going on, Phil? Good to see you, buddy. Slow weekend for Cujo as well. Yeah, it's a good weekend for slow weekend. A lot coming up with the spring. Spring is kind of sprung here in Jersey. It's like 55 degrees today. It's really nice. Got to get Joker out for a nice long walk after the show. That's why I wanted to start kind of on time. Since I was here, instead of just sitting around, I figured knock this out. We'll talk a little basketball, take him for like a half-hour stroll, come back, get the updates done for 6 o'clock and all of that. So figure we'll go till a little bit after 5. We'll talk through this 4-gamer. Not a ton in terms of, some of those slates late last week. Had a ton of games. We had that wacky one. Apologies, by the way, if you were looking for me on Friday. Just couldn't get it together enough with that broken slate. We had 10 games on FanDuel and 6 games on DraftKings. And I just couldn't get this sheet to look anything sane. The best way I was thinking about maybe doing it would have been like do a DraftKings show than a FanDuel show or vice versa. But the audiences are so different that the FanDuel part would be either boring people or there'd be 2 people there. So I just opted to make sure we were getting projections right and just kind of punted on doing a show that day. But we're back. What's happening, Peter? What's up, Trav? Good to see you, buddy. Always room for office quotes. Good boy. Office space, excuse me. I'm just thinking of a bunch of lumber lines. Oh boy. All right. So, happy DeLon Wright Day. We could start there. Top of the board on both sites. You can see him up there. Monster numbers. Got him getting 30 minutes. The Heat are incredibly shorthanded today. So we've got 3 members of the Heat all the way at the top, and then sprinkling of value guys, I'm sure, if we go down the board here. But 3 primary players from the Heat getting a ton of love. Delon Wright, with a ton of value, especially on DraftKings at 3,000. Well, I shouldn't say it that way because on FanDuel at 37, 200 above the minimum, he's in almost every lineup. In basically, all but one lineup, all but two lineups at the dead minimum on DraftKings. So it just looks like a phenomenal option from site to site. 0.98 FanDuel points per minute on the season, 0.92 DraftKings points per minute on the season. Low usage overall for the season, but in today's situation, I feel like he's going to see plenty of opportunity, see all the opportunity he wants. Bam and Jaime Jaquez kind of speak for themselves. So we'll get into that in just a sec, but let me check the news real quick here. Tuesday. Yeah, nothing going on there. No new news. So what we've got so far, get back to that tab. Good boy, Joker. Why don't you go lie down? So, let's see. Jalen Smith, Ben Simmons, Orlando Robinson are questionables. Orlando Robinson, not necessarily key, but it would be 10 available bodies versus 9 available bodies, and he's one of the bigger available bodies for the Heat. Duncan Robinson is available. He was probable to start the day, but he's available. And then out, Jonte Porter, Aaron Nesmith, Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Desmond Bane, John Conchar, Scottie Pippen Jr., Marcus Smart, in addition to all the guys from Memphis who are just out. Thomas Bryant, and this is where we get to the Heat. So all these guys from the Heat are out. Thomas Bryant, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Nikola Jovic, Josh Richardson, and Terry Rozier. Got into a little tussle the other day. Some of those guys suspended. Some of those guys banged up. So we've got, reasonably 7 real NBA players for the Heat. Bam, Jaquez, Caleb Martin, Highsmith, Dunk Robinson, DeLon Wright, and Kevin Love. Kevin Love getting like his usual 19, 18, 17, somewhere in that territory minutes, but a fantastic per minute player. If he gets into the mid-20s, Kevin Love could be interesting. We've got a really shorthanded Miami team, so that's where some of that value is coming from. In terms of Vegas, Toronto and Indy start the slate out. High octane game there, 245.5 point total. 2 of the other games, Detroit and the Knicks, are at 223, and then Miami Sacramento is at 223.5, and then Brooklyn and Memphis is at 214.5. So that Toronto Indy game is roughly 22 points higher than every other game, than the next highest game, and all the other ones below it, obviously. So that's a feature game for sure in terms of just the environment available. Pacers are favored by 6 over the Raptors, but the Raptors can keep up, assuming everybody's out there. There's some good pieces on that team. Detroit in New York to face the Knicks. Knicks favored by 11.5. Get right spot for the Knicks after struggling a little bit. They've been really, really banged up. 3 of their best players not on the floor. And it's had a little bit of an impact at this point. So hopefully righting the ship a little bit. Hartenstein back out on the court and hopefully back to pretty much full minutes at this point. Precious still playing well. Boyan playing well. Deuce McBride getting a little bit more trust from Tibbs. So there's a lot to like, pieces and parts from that game. I think there's a couple pieces that'll come through from the Detroit side of things. We'll take a look at it. But only 223 in that one. Brooklyn at Memphis. Brooklyn favored by 2 on the road. That one's the low-end game of the day. 214.5. That is a rough total. And then the last game, Sacramento favored at home over that short-handed Miami team by 7.5. 223.5 in that one. So we've got lots to work with. A couple interesting games on the board. I think, the good news about the one big point spread, the 11.5, I'm not really worried about typical blowout type narrative with this Knicks squad. just because of, who's on the team right now, how concentrated the rotation is, and it's Tibbs at the helm. So even if they're winning by 15, 18 points, Tibbs is just going to run these guys into the dirt. So I really don't worry about it. Maybe you see a couple additional minutes for like Deuce down the board, or Jericho Sims picks up a couple additional minutes or something like that toward the end of a total blowout game. But it's one of the teams that I think you sweat it a lot less than some of these other star-heavy teams up at the top where they take a couple of key guys out and then there's just a abundance of rotation pieces. The Knicks are fairly concentrated that way. So I think we don't really see too much issue. The one where I could see some impact is Hartenstein. That's where you might see Sims in over Hartenstein just because he's still dealing with that sore Achilles. So I'd be a little bit hesitant to go over the top on him. But I've got him at kind of like mid-20s tepid kind of minutes anyway. So I don't really think it's a problem, like projection-wise. That's it. Just 4 games to talk about. So that is our up and down for the ins and the outs, the game environment. What's up, Chris? I missed you Friday too, buddy. Yeah, I was just saying, I don't know if you're here for it, but I was just saying that broken slate with 10 games here, 6 games over there, I would have been so lost trying to go back and forth talking about this stuff. At certain points, I do worry about the quality of the show. I know most of the time I'm rambling up here anyway, and I know I go on and on sometimes, but I do like to put together some semblance of a good product here, and that one would have just been such a mess. The board would have been such a mess that I just thought it was better to punt the show that day. But I would have loved to have been on and talking about it. That's one where if I had somebody to talk to, it would have been great. I could have you could just go back and forth and shoot the shit, and the board doesn't really matter. The games don't really matter. You can just pick out a couple key plays. When it's just me and I'm trying to keep track going back and forth, you would have seen so many different times me going Jalen Brunson looks great on FanDuel and on DraftKings. He's not on the slate. This guy, it would have just been that over and over and over again. And I didn't do that well on that slate either, so you didn't need me that day. I forget what it was on Friday. It was something wacky on Friday got me. I forget what it was. Beach Mom, I'm with you, buddy. I'm so ready for baseball. I did my first public season-long draft the other day. Just jumped into a league on Saturday. Since I was hanging out, there was a $20 at 6 p.m. So I jumped into that. Did my typical, over the last few years, if you haven't been here, my typical approach for season-long redraft leagues is to go 0 starter, which is what I did there, projecting out at the top of the league. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, that's very tenuous projection-wise, and it's all very, very early and relying on certain projection systems to do those forecasts. But Chris is asking, do you by chance have any intentions to do content or projections for MLB Best Ball? Feel lost in these drafts. I don't really play best ball. I was thinking about trying to piece together some rankings or something like that for season long, just kind of to dovetail with what I'm talking about, or maybe doing at least an article on the 0 starter concept or different draft approaches. I know we are, we're coming up on March. We're not there yet, so we're right in the heart of starting out draft season, so it's not necessarily too late. I would have to think about best ball, just because of some of the the wrinkles with best ball. You could use whatever rankings I put together, at least at the top of the best ball draft. If I just did typical season long rankings, where you would probably struggle is the down bench concepts, the backup concepts, the deeper, I would imagine, and I've literally never played MLB best ball, but I would imagine that stacking up and creating deeper stacks through a team is probably part of the key to it. So you would lose some of that conceptually if you were just using regular rankings. I'd have to think about it. Not a hard no, Chris, but I'd say probably less than likely. But we can always chat about it in the Discord. I'm looking to get the Discord going a little bit more and keep it lively in there. So any questions, any thoughts like that, definitely jump in. But yeah, let me think about it. I'll take a look. I'll see, how straightforward I can make it, and maybe we'll have something. Good suggestion though. I appreciate it. It's a good thought. It's such a good thought. I'm actually going to write it down. If I had a pen handy. This pen doesn't work. What a shame. But for a working pen, you might have gotten best ball drafts. Best ball rankings. I will do my best to remember. I'm sure there's a working pen around here. I also have a computer in front of me where I can just make the note, which I will. And then we'll actually talk about this slate in just a minute. Where can I put this that I won't miss it? I'll just write it in my projections. All right. Noted. So getting back to the board here. Dellin Wright, like I was saying, top of the board, DeLon. I've said Dellin for too long. I know it's DeLon. 3,000 on DraftKings. Just kind of undeniable. I think 9.41 points per dollar is the highest we've seen all year. I'm pretty sure. He's a very good point per minute player. 0.92 for the season. Looking at the rest of the Heat, in this situation since the start of November with no Jimmy, no Tyler, no Josh, no Jovic, no Terry Rozier. Bam is a 1.32 FanDuel, 1.31 DraftKings per minute. Akez, 0.93 on both sites. Dunk Robinson, 0.72 on FanDuel, 0.76 on DraftKings. Those are the only guys with any kind of, and they're small samples. We're talking about 90 minutes for Bam, 143 for Akez, 129 for Dunk. Everybody else is even smaller than that, and basically not worth talking about. But at least there's a little bit of a sample for those three guys. So Wright lands in 98.6. I think that's the human body temperature exactly. Dellin Wright, human body play of the day. So 98.6% of your top 150 on FanDuel, 87.5% win rate over there at 3,700. On DraftKings at 3,000, 80% win rate, 99% of the top 150. That is a lock if I've ever seen one. I mean, you don't typically call things locks. I don't typically call things locks. But unless we get some significant news about what those minutes are going to look like, even if you dropped him down 26 minutes, 24 minutes, he'd probably be fine. He'd be more in this kind of territory, but he'd still be like the top play on the board. So just an aggressively good value play on both sides. Easy to get to. Point guard only on both. Plug and play. I'd probably have him 150 times. Akez, it's a good price. You know, 5,900 buying 35 minutes of reasonable production for the season. He's at 0.8. Like I said, in this situation, over 143 minutes, 281 possessions. This season, he's been at 0.93. Little bit of expectation there. If we get funky news coming in, weird, unexpected starting lineup, something like that, maybe he loses a couple minutes. But again, I think 59 probably maintains some value if he drops, even 4 or 5 minutes. At 56 on DraftKings, almost certainly maintains value at both forward spots. 45.35% win rate right now, 70% of the top 150. On FanDuel, he's 37.6% win rate and 61% of the top 150. And then, bam, the easy one to play, 9,000 center only on FanDuel, 8,600 center only on DraftKings, 40% win rate on DraftKings, 75% of the top 150, 32.8% win rate on FanDuel, 57% of the top 150. Very, very easy to play all three of those guys. What I'm surprised is I'm not seeing any of the other members of the Heat up here yet. Just want to sort for that. That's pretty surprising. 5,400 for Dunk. I don't love Dunk. Again, he's 0.79 for the season, 0.84 on the DraftKings slate. lower end performances in this situation in a small sample for the course of the season, but only came up with an 8.89% win rate and landed in 0.67% of the top 150. That means he's just over-owned on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we got a little bit more of them, but again, it's 3% of the top 150 against a 9% win rate. Let me just pull up his ownership here real quick. Yeah, he's mid-teens owned on both sites. So this win rate is about 5 points below his projected ownership on both sites. So basically what the Sims are saying right now is Dunk Robinson among all these guys is pretty overowned. Not to say that he can't get there, not to say that he can't be a piece in a winning lineup, but he's not really a priority. Just based on the Sims, based on how popular he is. There's other options that work a little bit better. Kevin Love comes up at 14.7% in winning lineups. Only 6% of the top 150. He's a little popular as well. On DraftKings, 6% of the winning lineups and only 2% of the top 150 for 4,300 at center only. On FanDuel, he's got the power forward eligibility. What I said about Kevin Love at the top stands, though. I mean, he's a 1.17 per minute player on the season, 1.22 on DraftKings. A significant per minute performer. If he lands at just like 24 minutes, 26 minutes, something like that, you know, maybe this comes down for a Kez and we see a little bit of Kevin Love out there. Maybe it comes down, maybe we don't quite see 30 minutes for a Highsmith and we see a few more for Kevin Love. That makes Kevin Love a little bit more interesting, but I think it just puts him, own him somewhere between where we landed on him in the top 150 here and about where the field is projected for, which is closer to the win rates on both sites. And I think you're probably about right. I don't mind having him out to about the field, but I don't want to go all that much further than that. And the reason I'm okay with having Kevin Love more with the field when that's a little not exactly how he's coming out in the Sims. The Sims are saying undercut the field by a little bit, by about half. But he's such a good per minute performer, and there is a little bit of edge to those minutes, where I think Dunk is just going to be in that 30-minute range, 30, 32, and he's a low-end per minute guy most nights. That's why I'm okay with getting a little closer to the field with a guy like Love versus a guy like Dunk. Caleb Martin, 16% win rate on FanDuel, 10% of the top 150. On DraftKings, just a 5% win rate, didn't land in the top 150. He's projected for double-digit ownership on DK. Kevin Love is projected for basically double what that DraftKings win rate is in terms of his ownership. On FanDuel, Caleb Martin's pushing not quite 20%, but getting into that territory. So he's another guy where just the public ownership is higher than the win rates for all three of these guys on both sides. Haywood Highsmith looks more playable on FanDuel. 13% winner, 16% of the top 150. That's a decent amount ahead of the field. So Highsmith picks up a little bit of value down toward the bottom here. On DraftKings, not really. 3.9% win rate, 2% of your top 150. Sorry to make it so just specifically Heat focused, but I think it's an important place to start, and I got just kind of sucked into looking where these guys were, because it's really interesting with these three being so key and looking so strong against the field, and then these three guys really being the exact opposite. We were talking a little bit about the down bench guys. Orlando Robinson, currently questionable. Could pick up a little bit more than this, just considering he's one of the bigger bodies. Like, if we get him confirmed in, I might give him 2 of these minutes and 2 of these minutes and even it out at like 8, and 10. We'll see where it goes. Cole Swider, probably the lowest end option. The guy least likely to get the minutes, I think. But right now, it's just kind of scraps for these guys. I don't think that even Jamal Cain, the guy getting the most minutes out of that group, is all that playable. and he's 33 on DraftKings, just play $3,000 right. It's just such a better option. Unless, of course, we get a weird starting lineup. Boss Scott's here, about to smoke a blunt. Dalen gets minutes even with a blowout. Yeah, I just think that's a no-brainer lock-in kind of a play. Beach Bum's going to smoke himself a blunt as well. Like the way you guys are thinking. Getting away from some of the heat. Should we just go like... I mean, it would almost make sense to just go team by team today, but let's just keep on with the usual approach. Cut into guards here. Sir Spencer the King is here. Cheers, Spence. Good to see you. Another day where I'm already wishing that the coffee pot was 2 feet closer. It's like right over there, but there's a door like right here, and it's on the other side of where that gap for the door is. So outside of right, all the way at the top of the board, we get 2 guys from the Indy-Toronto game when we sort to guards in those next 2 spots. Like both options, Ben Mathurin, they're obviously 2 different tiers of player. Ben Mathurin just from the mid-range on both sites. Scotty Barnes kind of a high-end option on both sides, but both coming out of that high-end Toronto Indy game. I really like to see that. And then if you skip over to Aaron Fox, you got RJ and Halliburton right there out of that game as well. So a lot of pieces when we sort for guards, and it also, obviously, for most of these guys, lands at small forward as well. But we've got a lot coming out of the Toronto Indy game, which is great to see. That's exactly where we want to be. Mathurin, 5,800 on FanDuel. Shooting guard, small forward. 5,500, same positions on DK. 37.9% winner on FanDuel. 45% of the top 150. On DraftKings, 32% winner. 37% of the top 150. Just looks like a strong option. 41.7 FanDuel points in 32.5 minutes the other night. 0.88 per minute on the season. A 22.4% usage rate overall for the season. Lots I like about Ben Mathurin at good mid-range prices with solid expectation of minutes. Scotty, just a high-end option. For 93, it's a pretty good price for 1.26 FanDuel points per minute, 24% usage. Both forward spots on the FanDuel slate. Getting to him 33.6% of the time in winners, 37% of the time in the top 150. Little room there beyond the field, I think. At 8,900, you still get him point guard and small forward. I love the eligibility on DraftKings. 28.6% winner, 24.6% of the top 150. Might be right around his public popularity. Let's take a look. Yeah, that is a very minor step ahead of his public popularity here. But given that the win rate is a little bit even further beyond that, I do think there's a couple additional shares there if you want him of Scotty. He sims out just fine as a winner, so you can get a little bit more than that top 150 number, which puts you a little further ahead of the field. And I do think that makes sense. You know, even with him being somewhat popular, just buying shares in that game makes a lot of sense to me. Sticking with that theme then, RJ at 73, 18.67% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Small forward only on FanDuel. Shooting guard small forward for 7,000 on DraftKings. Gets him in 26.5% of winners, 32.6% of the top 150. So RJ looks better on DraftKings, but very, very playable on FanDuel. And we're getting more of them than that win rate. Halliburton looks a little bit better on FanDuel. 9,700 point guard only, 28% win rate, 35% of the top 150. On DraftKings, he still looks great, but he's just 25% across the board, basically. 9,500 point guard only. 1.50 DraftKings points, 1.46 FanDuel points per minute. Having a fantastic year. Plenty of upside for him in that game. If it stays close, I could see him getting minutes beyond that as well, of course. Averaging 32 minutes on the season in his 45 games. Got him at 33. He's averaged 33 over the last 3. There's no real need to go down the Tyrese Halliburton minutes hole here, but I just wanted to see it. Yeah, 34 for 3 straight, and then dropped to 31 in the most recent game, or 31.2 to put a fine point on it. But, obviously capable in a tight game, going up to 35, 36 minutes and exceeding these numbers by a decent amount. There's a lot of ceiling on Tyrese Halliburton in this game. Jumping back up the board to that Miami-Sacramento game, we've got De'Aaron Fox there. Doesn't look great on FanDuel. Looks very, very good on DraftKings. It's a real price difference, even against the higher cap. 9,800 point guard only against the higher FanDuel cap versus 8,300 point guard only on DraftKings. You can see what that does for him. Landed in nearly half of the winning lineups, nearly half of our top 150 in those sims, and 27.29% of the winning lineups. So we're going to see probably a fair share of lineups with a DeLon Wright, and De'Aaron Fox combo. One at point guard, one at guard. Or util, obviously. But that's a lot of ownership going to those two guys. And justifiably so. I'm not saying it's wrong. Zaire Williams, small forward only on FanDuel, 18.6% win rate, 24.6% of the top 150. That's an interesting spot. 4,700 on DraftKings. He got shooting guard and small forward eligibility over there. That's why he landed on this page. 4,700, 22.96% winner, 28% of the top 150. Looks like a good option. 0.84 DraftKings points per minute over the course of the season. 19% usage rate over the full season. 22-3 in 30 and a half minutes the other night. Obviously not going to get you there. Let's see. I don't have the day from 2 games back when he went 36. I think he had a better day that day, but I don't have it in front of me. Overall, just cheap. A cheap way to book 30 minutes of reasonable production. He's in the mix for sure on both sites. And it looks like we're ahead of the field. I'm going to guess that is well ahead of the public ownership. And not as aggressively ahead as I would have thought, actually. He's about 5 points lower than this on FanDuel, and I think we are better ahead on DraftKings. Yeah, we're more ahead of the field on him on DraftKings, which makes sense. It's where he looks better. It was about, low double digits points ahead of the field on DK. Just a handful of points ahead of the field on the FanDuel slate. Two of my Knicks. Like I said, I'm not really worried about minutes for like DiVincenzo, Brunson. I think these guys are just going to get theirs regardless of what's going on in that game, basically. Jalen looks like a very good play. He's popular on both sites. One of the more high-end projections on the board. Plenty of ceiling available for him. 34.7% win rate. 38% of the top 150 for 9,600 on FanDuel. 9,700 on DraftKings. Still landing. Even at the higher salary against the lower cap, still pulling a 20.9% win rate, 26% of the top 150. Jalen looks like a great option, and DiVincenzo just shoots the lights out and not afraid to chuck. 18.5% winner on FanDuel, 12.6% of the top 150, though, so I suspect we're a little below the field there. Couple of points below the field. I have no real issues, though, because this is ahead of the field's projected ownership. Field is between the win rate and the top 150 number there. So I have no real issues pushing that out to at least the field's ownership if you want to get it to 18, 20% and ride, about the win rate on your exposure there. I have no real issue with that. Diva's got a pretty high ceiling still. It's been right around this 1.01 on FanDuel over the recent run for the Knicks. think I put them in exactly the number. Let's see. Oops. Yeah, 1.01 over the recent stretch. And like we looked at the other day, just takes a ton of threes, shooting 40+%. Taking 7.4 a game overall, 3.1 makes per game, 41.5%. Jalen, by the way, taking 6.5 threes a game, making 40% of his. Knicks are deadly from three when everybody's hitting. Well, I guess anybody's deadly from three when everybody's hitting. Where's Bojan? He's not on this tab. So both of these Knicks look fantastic. Mikal Bridges, just 8% of the top 150 against the 16.7% win rate on FanDuel. See where he landed. This is the low end game between Brooklyn and Memphis. Bridges, yeah, he's owned more like the win rate. So we're basically saying cut the field in half on Bridges on both sites. I don't dislike the option. He's a point per minute guy. 7,800 at shooting guard small forward on FanDuel. 72 shooting guard small forward on DraftKings. There's upside there. 25.2% usage rate. You know, he's a guy who is a whirlwind defensive kind of a player who gets his hands on the ball a good amount, but he also has a fair amount of usage. So I like Bridges in some ways, but not when the field's there. And the field seemed to be there today. So I think we can get away from him and just ride the idea that he's most often going to come in right around that 30.5 points, or 30, 33, 34, 35 points. Quentin Grimes, if you believe in revenge, I don't think he had any kind of problem necessarily with the Knicks, but he might want to show Tibbs up. I'm not a narrative chaser, though. That's no reason for me to go after it. But 24 minutes at 4,100. Landed in 22% of the top 150 against a basically matching win rate on FanDuel. 21% of the top 150 against a 15.7% win rate for 3,600 on DraftKings. It's not completely uninteresting. Played 26.5 the other night. 21.4 FanDuel points. That's about what you're going to get from Quentin Grimes. He's a 0.65 FanDuel point per minute player. 15% usage rate. Most of that with the Knicks. I think that was his first game with Detroit the other day. He's been banged up since before the trade. You know, what I think it more maybe does is just it makes it a little bit murky around some of the other guys' minutes, some of the other guys' expectations. But he's definitely coming through at price. I just don't trust him all that much in terms of, I don't think there's all that much ceiling there. I don't think you're getting much beyond an upside day is going to be 5 points per dollar on FanDuel. An upside day is going to be 5.5 points per dollar on DraftKings. There's not that much more there for Quentin Grimes. Unless they just say, hey, kid, go get him back in the Garden. Here's 32 minutes, and we're going to give you all the shots you want. I don't think we're going to see that from Quentin Grimes today. He still looks playable, though. I'm not saying he's not. Nembhard, playable on FanDuel, better on DraftKings. Cunningham, better on FanDuel. Looks like we're undercutting the popularity a little bit, but looks like a good option at 20.9% win rate. Another guy, just one of the higher end guards on the slate in terms of talent. And at a certain point, there is, with all the value of it available, we can look at talent. We can look at some raw scoring options. Cam Thomas, super scoring dependent, like we always talk about with him, but buying 29% usage, buying 33 minutes for 7,000 shooting guard small forward has its upside. And on the days where he has his day, you're going to ride a pretty nice fantasy score for those prices. Point guard, shooting guard on DraftKings at 6,800. He came up 12.5% of the time in winners, but just 6% in the top 150. Another guy who is drawing more popularity than that publicly. So we're looking to undercut a lot of those Brooklyn guys, but I assume the Memphis guys here as well. Yeah. So basically everybody from that game is coming up a little bit lighter than the field is getting to them, which again, as much as I'm enthusiastic about the fact that the Toronto Indy game came up pretty strong for us, I have no real problems with undercutting the field. Have some of the Memphis and Brooklyn guys, but undercutting the field in that low end game, especially with the way that the Nets minutes are distributed right now, is a little bit everybody gets a little, nobody gets a ton kind of a structure. So it's not great for DFS. So I don't really mind that at all, the way these guys are coming up. Bo Degen's here. The king of the memes. Bo Degen always dropping stuff into the Discord. He's the only person out there who keeps similar hours to me. I suspect he's also a vampire. But Po Degen's up at 4 o'clock in the morning dropping memes into the baseball chat. Boss Boscat loves Dunk today. Dunk Robinson, I assume. The competition has Duncan R and Akez at close to the same projection, 28.7 and a few hundreds. Where do I have them? I've done quite a bit lower than 28.7. I don't know where they're getting to that. They must be giving him a significant number of additional minutes. I've got him at 30, Duncan Robinson. They're either giving him... And it's fair. I think you could argue for an additional 32 minutes, something like that. But that sounds like a 36-minute projection to me. Yeah, they're giving him, I would imagine, 36 minutes and a little bit of a boost in his per-minute production to... Let's see. Like 0.8, somewhere on there. 0.79. I can see how you get there. Let's see. Let's see what the minutes have looked like. Obviously, there's a ton of time available for the Heat today, so I could probably buy the minutes more than the rate uptick. And 30 last game, 32 the game before that, 32 2 games back from that, then all teens, low 20s. 30-minute game back on the 14th. 40-minute game, that's what we're looking for, back on the 12th. 32. Another 40-minute game back in mid-December. I could maybe give him a few additional minutes, which probably just take away some of the guys down board here. So it might end up like take those away, something like that, and then just give a couple of them to Dunk. Because if I put him like 34, gives them a little bit more to work with. I do think there's upside beyond the 30 minutes. I'm not arguing that at all. I think the minutes is more realistic than giving him much of a boost. Although he's 0.79 for the season. Maybe I've just got him too low. It's the fact that he's been so low, 0.72. And I mean, we're talking about 7 100ths of a fantasy point per minute between those two things. So it's very, very negligible. So if I leave him at this, I'll just leave him at his season-long rate and give him a little bit more. Probably the right answer. So let me cut this to that. I'm going to take away Cole Swider's 2 minutes. I'm going to make this, both of those guys, 6. I'm going to give Alondes and Orlando Robinson 6 apiece. Duncan Robinson goes up to 34. We'll find a few additional for him, and then we'll make him... Last year for the full season, 0.64, by the way. So the model wants him like between what he's done this year and what he did last year, but I do think there's a little bit of an argument that he should be closer to this year's number. So we'll give him that. Yeah, all right, so that gets him to 28.5 DraftKings points. Assuming that was the site that you were looking at. So yeah, I don't really have a big issue for it. That's why I like Terry knows he's just here to make some cannabis and snacks and laughs. Fortunately, EMAC always in the low stakes GPPs taking his cannabis and snacks money. Poor Po DGen. Yeah, Melissa always gets EMAC. Melissa, if you're here, Po DGen needs you to take EMAC down to avenge him tonight. So yeah, I know you guys didn't see. Obviously, I was changing that on the other sheet in the background. Nothing on the screen here changes. This is all just static information. So that's why when I deleted this, his projection doesn't go away. This is just a dashboard. But I do think I'm going to do this where Dunk will go to there. Both these guys will go to here. And then Dunk jumps to 28.5 DK, 26.6 FanDuel. Which I think makes sense. It keeps him right in this territory. It's not giving him an aggressive amount there, but I was low on the minutes. And I had undercut where he probably should be. So that's a good call out. I appreciate that. I think it was Steven that gave that note. Yeah, I might have had him higher earlier in the day if you were looking at something that I had out there. I'll get this updated right after the show. So Dunk will go back up. He'll be higher win rate, better exposure against the field. His numbers will make more sense to probably have him around the field's exposure, which is good. I think that makes sense. He's at, let's see. Yeah, like mid-teens FanDuel I can get behind maybe. And then DraftKings was similar. Yeah, mid-teens on both sides. I would probably still go a little bit under the field on him. Just because he is still, even with those changes, he is still a lower end per minute guy. So everything I said about that kind of still stands. I just gave him a little bit more. But I have less of an issue with it now that we're giving him a little bit. I think that's the right thing to do. Just given that he's gone into the 40s in shorthanded situations a couple times, I think there's justification to project him for mid-30s minutes and then ride the upside. So, all right, that is resolved. Let's move on from Dunk Robinson. I think we talked through all the valuable guards. It's only a 4-gamer, so obviously we've got some downboard guys. Bruce Brown drawing 8.5% winner, 6.6% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Playable on DraftKings, but definitely a much lower exposure rate than his win rate. IQ looking very strong on FanDuel. 6,900, the biggest differentiated guy across sites down board here. 6,900 on FanDuel at both guard spots. 37.4% win rate against the 40% exposure rate in our top 150. On DraftKings, not really as much. 8.75% winner, 4% of the top 150 because he costs 72 and he's point guard only over there. For the season, 0.96 per minute on FanDuel, 1.01 per minute on DraftKings. It's a couple hundredths of a point lower than those numbers since he's joined Toronto. and I've got him in that kind of a territory again, but it still has him looking really good. So I think it's only upside beyond where we're at here for IQ on the FanDuel slate. Not obviously not results oriented, but I think you could argue that he should get a little tiny sliver more than I'm giving him. So it would only improve outlook wise on FanDuel. On DraftKings, wouldn't really make that much difference. Gary Trent also looks strong on the FanDuel slate, 4,900 shooting guard only. And these are just more pieces of that Toronto Indy game. 23% winner, 28% of the top 150. Another guy, 7% win rate on DraftKings, 4% of the top 150. So he's playable, but that probably is putting us a little bit below the field's level. Means he's a little bit overpopular. Ben Simmons I don't love, but he did land in 8.5% of the winners on FanDuel. 5% exposure in that low-end game. I have no issues leaving some Ben Simmons to the field. Nobody else really down here. A couple odds and ends of these guys, but nobody all that important. Bruce Brown we talked about. IQ we talked about. Again, Duncan Robinson will go up from these numbers if you reran this after the show. Vince, there's a piece from Brooklyn that's looking pretty playable on FanDuel. 27% winner, 28% of the top 150. DraftKings at 6,900, shooting guard, small forward, didn't really land in the top 150. 10.7% win rate. Vince is going to be higher on than that. Yeah, he's like half again on top of that exposure rate, or on top of that win rate in terms of his public exposure. So we're at like a fifth of the public's exposure here. Kennard looks like basically who he is on both sites. Thomas we touched on. Nembhard, playable on both. Mid-teens across the board for a fair price. Malik Monk looks a lot better on DraftKings than he does on FanDuel. Mid-teens win rate, just into the double digits in terms of exposure, but on FanDuel, Malik Monk at 6,700, just a 7% win rate and just 1% of the top 150. Jump to the big men. So Jaquez won't be bothered by any of those changes for Duncan Robinson. I'm taking all those minutes out of the down bench guys. Looks like a pretty strong option here. 37.6% winner, 45% winner on DraftKings, 61% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 70% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Looks like a fairly easy spot. Just reloading some ownership here. Check the news. Nothing critical. Suspense the King calling the Bruce Brown Remember Me game. So yeah, you could say, if you wanted to, going back to what Steven brought up about competing projections, you could take a couple of minutes away from Jaquez, and it would pull him down to about what they've got him at. They've got him at 32 minutes. That's probably right around that projection. I have no issues with it though. I expect a lot of minutes for those top end Heat players. Ben Mathurin we talked about already. Josh Hart, another piece of that Knicks game. A lot of Knicks looking strong again. Hart at 6,900, both forward spots on FanDuel, nearly 30% of the winning lineups, nearly 30% of the top 150. Same story on DraftKings for 6,500 at both forward spots. An aggressively good rebounder for his size. A very, very good actual basketball player. For fantasy, he's been delivering. He's been really good at these mid-range prices. Eventually, he's going to hit a price ceiling, though. He's a 0.77 per minute guy over the course of the full season, 0.79 on DraftKings. He's a 12.6% usage rate guy. In 41.7 the other night, he put up 31.6 FanDuel points. He's been delivering games in this kind of territory, needing 38, 40 minutes to get there. I love Josh Hart, and I've been using him for fantasy, and I think he checks out well tonight, given the sim results on the 4-game slate. But he always comes with that low usage warning. He always comes with that needs to do Josh Hart things, and he typically does do his Josh Hart things out there enough to find value. But on the days that he doesn't, those games become clunkers awful fast. So, again, looks great. Definitely want to use him. But does come with a little bit of an asterisk, as always. His usage over the last month, the 26th. Let's take, there's like one game left with OG in there, I think. Over the last month with the key players out, his usage has climbed a little, but it's still just 15.8%. So he's got to, like I said, make his Josh Hart things happen. But his per minute number has been great. 432 minutes, 835 possessions. His per minute number has been up to 0.85, which is where we've got him projected today. So there has been a jump in both usage and output. It's just that ceiling still doesn't really exist for Josh Hart on most nights. You need him to decide, hey, I'm taking a couple extra threes today, and then make them. You need him to have a ridiculous rebounding game instead of just a regular, really good Josh Hart rebounding game. So it's difficult to hit absolute ceiling with Hart, but he delivers, around that median projection constantly. He's been really good in this situation. So I like the option on both sides. Scotty Barnes, we talked about. RJ, we talked about. Both look very good coming out of that Toronto Indy game. Both look terrific on DraftKings. RJ takes a bit of a hit on FanDuel. Quickly actually looked better on FanDuel today, I think. I still like RJ's output a little bit better. But Quickly did look like the better of the two options. But RJ looks very playable on FanDuel. Zaire, we talked about. Fontecchio, 5,600, both forward spots on the FanDuel slate. About 8% across the board. 4,800, both forward spots on DraftKings. Looks a lot more appealing. 21.2% winner, 26% of the top 150. That is about double his projected ownership. So a little ahead of the field on Fontecchio on DraftKings. Just playable and moderately so on the FanDuel slate. Pascal Siakam looking a little bit better on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Another big piece coming out of that Toronto Indy game looking great. 30% win rate, 41% of the top 150. Love to see that. And then on DraftKings, 17.5% win rate, 20% of the top 150. Cheaper on FanDuel, always going to have that impact. 7,800 versus 8,100 against the much lower cap on DraftKings. Big deal. Jaren Jackson looking playable, but undercutting the field on him on the FanDuel slate. 22.6% winner, 16% of the top 150. On DraftKings, 13% winner, also undercutting the field, looks like. So yet another guy. Yeah, Triple J pulling roughly 11 times this ownership rate on DraftKings. He's a very good per minute guy. We all know what Jaren Jackson can do. Just getting to this last month. But his per minute production this season, he's been at 119 over the last month in 326 minutes. Been at 118 for the season, 118, 119. Last year, he was a 1.37 per minute player. I'd say not insignificant dip. Maintaining nearly 30% usage. So there's been a pretty big dip there. with that output. I've got him ahead of his rate by 0.05 of a point. I've got him at 1.23 today. You can go a little bit higher than that if you wanted. Very playable based on the win rates. And on FanDuel, he's fine. I mean, 22.6%. We're under the field on FanDuel, but we're aggressively under the field on DraftKings. Against the win rate, he's fine. If you wanted to grab a few shares, you can grab an additional handful of shares here and still be well below the field. Again, he's owned above 20% in the projections on DraftKings. So this is one of the bigger undercuts on the board on DraftKings. Dorian Finney-Smith, 11.4% win rate, 17% of the top 150, only 3,900 on DraftKings. Just a little odd duck price play hiding down there. Not a lot, no other $3,000 guys in the forward spots on DK. Makes them a little bit interesting. 26 minutes, a low-end performer in terms of output, 0.7 on FanDuel, 0.71 on DraftKings per minute, 13.4% usage for the season. Nobody's idea of a good DFS player. But at 39, it's just a plug-and-play price. If you get him anywhere around that median projection, you're probably fine. Vince, we talked about. Looks good on FanDuel, undercutting the field on DraftKings. Robinson, we've talked about enough, but if you weren't here, he's definitely going up from those numbers. We've already changed it. Santi, minorly playable on FanDuel, 10% winner, minorly playable on DraftKings, but again, another Memphis guy, under the field, basically across the board in that Brooklyn-Memphis game. Highsmith coming out of Miami, 13% winner, 16% of the top 150. Looks better on FanDuel for 45. 46 on DraftKings, not so much. 3.9% winner, 2% of the top 150. Caleb Martin, similar to Highsmith, 15.9% winner on FanDuel, 10% of the top 150. So a little below the field probably still, but a justifiable enough win rate. On DraftKings, didn't get him at all in the top 150, only a 5% win rate. He's 57 power forward only versus 55 on FanDuel, both forward spots. A lot more utility for Caleb Martin on FanDuel. Obi, not at 48 on FanDuel. Maybe a few shares just as dart throws at 38 on DraftKings. Such a high-end game environment, 6.13% win rate, 3% of the top 150 in an 18-minute is who he is kind of a situation. He's had a few random upside games where he steps into some minutes. He needs minutes to succeed, obviously. But at 0.9, if he stumbles into 6 additional minutes, that becomes an interesting option. I would throw a couple Obi darts on DraftKings today. Short slate. Got to make a couple decisions like that. Aja Thompson, not really coming up all that much. He's one of the guys, I think there's a potential impact there with Quentin Grimes. He only played 20.7 the other night, only put up 7.4 FanDuel points. Stint in the first quarter, picked up 2 fouls. Grimes came in. Grimes started the second quarter as well. I don't know if it was the direct sub or not, but I just glanced at it to see what his fouls look like. Thompson came back in for a short stint in the second, picked up another foul, came in the third, picked up, I think, another 2, I want to say. In other words, he was in foul trouble in the second and third quarters and then played most of the fourth closing minutes. So I think we're okay, 26-28. I don't think he's going to dip to like 20-22. And he's been a very good per minute performer, 0.98, 0.94 across FanDuel DraftKings. From the mid-range, he's worked a lot for us in Sims this season, but I'm kind of glad with the murky minutes that we're not getting a ton of them here. 2.9% winner on FanDuel, 1% of the top 150, 3.9% winner on DraftKings, 2% of the top 150. Kind of an afterthought. Fournier, kind of an afterthought. Bojan didn't really hit the board. I think we could probably get a little bit more from Bojan, actually. I got him low. Here's my Knicks minutes. Yeah, 19 last time out, 24, 23. Yeah, I guess lower mid 20s. Probably still right. You could probably say 2 or 3 Josh Hart minutes should go to Bojan. 2 or 3 Devo minutes maybe. But just it's not who Tibbs is. But Bojan definitely deserves a couple minutes beyond the 20. I think I've got him, 24? Hell did he go? 22. I could probably give him 24 at least. I don't want to take him away from Deuce, though. I could take him away from Burks. I could cut Burks to 16, but that's not really. Talking to myself here, gang. Hold on. 19 last time, 13 the game before that. It's not going to matter at all, but I might find an additional 2 minutes for Bojan in the next update. I feel like 22 is a little bit low. He's just a way better player than that. And I'm pretty sure that Tibbs knows that. Right now at 22, he didn't come through at all. At 24, he's also not going to really come through. It's going to make him 21 FanDuel points, 22 and a half DraftKings points. But I think to get the minutes correct, I think he probably should have 2 more. Nobody else really looking good. If you want to talk revenge narrative, I have very few minutes available, 20 minutes. 4,400. A very unlikely to be at all relevant player. But man, if anybody ever needed revenge against the team, Evan Fournier against this Knicks organization definitely has some beef after they've kept him glued to the bench for the last, 3 years? In the prime of his career. I don't think we're getting there. I think we're getting his 20 or less minutes. I think we're getting his 0.88 type output. League average-ish kind of usage. I don't think there's a lot there. But a pissed off Evan Fournier in 20 minutes if he takes 20 shots. Yeah. Just wanted to tease the revenge thing. Don't think we're missing anybody else here. Dama Precious has been really delivering. He's been very, very good for the Knicks so far. That said, at price, at ownership, doesn't look like a key piece. 12.2% winner on FanDuel shouldn't be ignored by any means. 8.6% of the top 150, a little below the field. On DraftKings, 7.4% winner at 7,000, both power forward and center. Only got to him 2.6% of the time in winning lineup in the top 150. So capable of getting you there, but not a key piece on DraftKings. A little bit better looking on FanDuel. Tons and tons of minutes. He's been... for the season, 0.96 per minute in this Knicks run. Do I still have it on the screen? I don't. Since joining the Knicks, 0.86, which is right in the territory I've got him. Caleb Martin we talked about. Aja Thompson we talked about. I think that's it for the forwards, gang. Take a look at the centers. We'll jump in checking on some top lineups that were built, and then we'll get out of here. Poe DGen dropping Kevin Smith lines in the chat. The kid I went to high school with is in that what's a Nubian scene when they're doing the Comic-Con press conference thing. If you look right in the front row of the crowd, he's just an extra. But it was a big deal when we were in high school. Kevin Smith's from my hometown, so a lot of stuff went on in the area. And they did an open call. So he's if you look in the front, looking from the audience's perspective, front left, from the character on stage's perspective, front right when it shoots down. He's in the front right, kid with long hair. Justin Vellucci. Can't believe I remember his name. But yes, big fan of Kevin Smith, his movies, mostly his older movies. New stuff, not as good. Although I like Tusk. Tusk was fun. Clerks 3, it's just like, I get to hang out with these guys again, but it was a little bit silly. It's funny, like he's very good at finding good sentimental moments, pulling on some heartstrings, and like he's very good at managing his characters that way. But he also builds in like wacky, stupid shit that like takes it down, you know? So Clerks 3 like could have been, I think, without some of the wacky, stupid shit. Like, keep it funny, don't get me wrong. But there was a little bit of too much. Jughead and Archie. I love when he, in Chasing Amy, when they're talking about, he basically apes the scene from Jaws where they're talking about their scars, right? And he's talking about between what's-her-face and Jason Lee going back and forth about things that happened when they were hooking up with girls. I skinned my knee because the car was in drive. Dogma is good. You can't find Dogma. Dogma is under lock and key. I actually have it back over here somewhere. But yeah, that one's under lock and key in the Miramax vault, I think. Harvey won't sell the rights, and a lot of places obviously just won't air it. But a very good movie. I remember seeing that in the theater back in the day. I remember people were protesting it back in the 90s. Kevin Smith went to a protest somewhere around our hometown and protested his own movie. There's an interview with him on local TV, just holding up a picket sign saying like, people are going to go to hell for watching this. What I love about Kevin Smith, and I've said it before, like, think what you want of his movies. I enjoy them. I like them. I've always thought they were fun. But what I love about him is, one, just an absolutely great raconteur, right? Like just a great talker, a great storyteller. If you've ever seen any of his spoken word, his Q&A stuff, it's half comedy special, half just speechifying. But he's just really, really good at telling stories, and he's really good at that. And he's also just this really pure-hearted guy. Think what you will of his talent and his output into the creative world, but he's always encouraged people. Hey, if you've got an idea, if you've got a dream, if you want to do this, if you think you'd be good at this, do it. Don't let people tell you no. Don't wait for people to say yes. Just go do it. And you look at him, and I mean, that's what he did. Maxed out a bunch of credit cards, made Clerks for like $35,000. Took it to Sundance or Cannes or whatever. And became Kevin Smith, self-made guy. It's just, anybody who's at that level and just is encouraging about things, not a gatekeeper to things. Telling people like, hey, look, there's no secret other than just try. Just go do it. I think that's meaningful. I think people, it's good to have people at that level saying. So that's why I'll always be on Kevin Smith's side. Anyway, speaking of sides, I think I want Bam Adebayo on my side tonight. Especially on DraftKings, 75% of our top 150, looking pretty good. What you can't probably do is get Bam, Sabonis, and both of those point guards. Oh, no, actually you can, right? Because we could go point guard, center, util. So you can get all four of those. Just saying Sabonis because he's landing in 25% of the top of the winners on DraftKings versus we're getting a lot more Pirtle than we are Sabonis, but he was in 15.9% of the top of the winners. That said, I think Sabonis is probably the more popular of the two given where we landed on there, but that might just be a price thing. Let's say. Yep. Wow. All right. That's interesting. The field is well ahead of that number on Sabonis. I have no issues going up to, if you go up to like the win rate even, like 25%, you're still undercutting the field by a little bit. Field's roughly 10 points ahead of that win rate in the projected ownership that I used here. So we're undercutting on Sabonis. It's probably a little price driven. And the fact that we've got Pirtle to fill that spot for 4,000 less, not that they're competitive in terms of the median projection by any means, but it just fills out the lineup a little bit better. But that's interesting. I'm curious to see how some of those structure when we look at the lineups to see if we have any Bam, Sabonis, Delon Wright, and was it De'Aaron Fox? I think it was Fox. Yeah. Right? Because it would be, and Akez would probably be in that mix as well, which you could do. Like those four, and then Sabonis just as in terms of the highest raw projected player. That would be, looking at it that way, you're kind of ignoring the popularity in the Sims and how it comes out, and you're just looking to book that raw potential. But I'm very curious to see how many came out with this configuration. And hopefully I'll leave enough time for us to look. It is 5:17. On FanDuel, we got Sabonis 22% of the time in the top 150. He comes up ahead of Jakob Poeltl over there. 29% winner versus Poeltl's 13% win rate. We did get Poeltl out ahead of that win rate and probably ahead of the public exposure for 6,800. But Sabonis looks like the better option on the FanDuel slate. The win rate not far off of the DraftKings win rate, but the ownership is significantly higher and significantly closer to that win rate. Sabonis is still well below the public popularity on FanDuel too, though. Not as aggressively below, but it's still below the public popularity. For 68, Poeltl's 1.12 FanDuel points per minute, 1.09 DraftKings points per minute definitely plays. 6,400 on DK, 15.9% winner, 36% of the top 150, and then decent numbers on the FanDuel side. Put up 41.6 in just 26 minutes the other night. Getting to that high-end game environment. It wouldn't be my first choice of players from that game if somebody said you can have anybody from this game that you want. He's probably the 6th or 7th guy I would choose, just in a total vacuum, no price, no anything considered. But he still looks like a strong option. Yeah, we've got revenge on all sides in that game, huh? Just think with Siakam on the other side of this one. Bruce Brown, somebody mentioned. Jalen Duren going up against the Knicks. Playable on DK, 11.4% of the winning lineups, 8.6% of the top 150 for 6,800. On FanDuel, it's 7,900. That is an aggressively high price for Jalen Duren. He's been good, 1.13 FanDuel points per minute, 17.1% usage rate. He put up 47.7 in 32 and a half minutes, let's call it, the other night. That feels high. On a 4-gamer, he's just getting boxed out by that price, if nothing else. 6.16% win rate, just 0.67% of the top 150. Getting more Miles Turner, we're getting more Nick Claxton, we're getting more Santi Aldama, more Precious, more Kevin Love, more Hartenstein, more Trey Lyles even. We got 1.33% Trey Lyles. He's a power forward only, granted. But 1.33% in the top 150 against a 0.7% win rate, as opposed to 0.67% in the top 150 against the 6% win rate for the center at a much higher price. So not a lot of Jalen Duren on FanDuel today. Turner, 10.5%, basically 10s across the board on FanDuel. 10.5% winner on DraftKings, but came up just 5% of the time in the top 150, which is curious. He's owned like 3 times that amount on DK. I don't really have issues if you wanted to go to the win rate. You're still undercutting the field by a little bit. I do like getting to Miles Turner, but I like getting to Miles Turner when other people aren't. And it looks like people are there today. I think he's playable. Perfectly fine to have some shares. If you want to grab 10%, I think you're okay. I think 5% is more appropriate. On the FanDuel slate, right around 10%. Be with the field is fine. Claxton, playable on both sites, but not really a priority on either one from that low-end Brooklyn-Memphis game. Precious, we already talked about. Just very good output, very good points per minute performer in extensive minutes. Or an okay points per minute performer in extensive minutes, I should say. Kevin Love is a spectacular points per minute performer in his limited role. Again, if he goes from 18 to like 24 in this shorthanded situation, could be a Kevin Love succeeding kind of a night. And at 43 on DraftKings, that would make him very, very interesting. At 47 on FanDuel, he'd be pretty interesting. He's already pretty playable. I just feel like this means the field is already there. It's just a matter of, do we want to project him that way? Try and jump ahead of the field? Or do we want to be a little below the field? I don't know that we can get to enough of a position, even if I increased that to, I wouldn't give him like 24. I think that would be a little outlandish. But if I made it like 20, 21, I don't think we're getting even to the Fields level. But I do like the option. I don't mind if you rostered Kevin Love, like I said earlier, just taking a good point per minute performer. I don't mind grabbing a few additional shares of him. There's a lot of other guys on the board that I would take shares of Kevin Love and just hope for the additional minutes with not just pure wish making kind of hope, like a realistic path to additional minutes tonight, given how shorthanded they are. I think I would take that shot a little bit more than shots around some of the other guys in similar price range, similar minutes expectation, or similar percentage numbers. Hartenstein is who he is on FanDuel. DraftKings, not so much. 6,100 on DK, didn't really hit the board. FanDuel, 8%, 9% across the board. Just 25 minutes up for him tonight. I think they're going to be a little bit cautious with him. Just dealing with that Achilles. The last thing they need is him to go down and not bounce back up. Played 24 the last time out. Just 11 in the game before that in his first game back. That was a little bit annoying. But I think mid-20s is probably realistic. Even in a tight game, which I don't really expect this to be. And he's the guy, like I said at the top when I was talking about the Knicks, in terms of I don't really worry about blowout with this team, just with how condensed they are, how the Tibbs just doles out the minutes anyway. But the one guy I do think could definitely see if they're up big in the fourth quarter, and Hartenstein has played 20 minutes, 18, 19 minutes, I could see Tibbs saying, all right, take a seat, and Jericho Sims playing a little bit more. So this is maybe a stretch, even saying that he's this valuable on FanDuel. I question that. If he goes out and plays 28 minutes or even the full 25, probably going to be fine. But I don't know how much ceiling there is on Hartenstein tonight. Not his typical ceiling, let's put it that way. Other than that, I think that's the up and down, the long and short, and so on and so forth of it. Mamba asked about Cade Cunningham. I knew somebody had asked about Cade. Mamba's right here. Solid on both sides. Better looking on FanDuel, but under the field a little bit on both. Further, I think, below the field. Further below the win rate anyway on FanDuel. Closer to the win rate on DK, which typically means closer to the public exposure, but let's see. Field is, we're undercutting the field a little bit. They're in like the mid-teens, closer to that win rate number. I have no issue if you wanted to go to the Fields level, though. That's amounts to a handful of additional shares. But yeah, around 10-15% of Cade on DK. And then on FanDuel, came up 12% of the time against a 20% win rate. So there is room there. He's on right about that win rate on FanDuel. So I have no issues somewhere between here. Somewhere between 10 and 20% on FanDuel for Cade. A very good player, one of the more secure, at least median projections on the board outside of, barring some exceptional circumstance, and a fair amount of ceiling. 29% usage over the course of the season, 1.14 FanDuel, 1.19 DraftKings, and we've seen the upside games out of him. He's at a fair price for his talent. 8,500 on FanDuel, 8,000 on DraftKings. Multi-guard eligible on FanDuel too. I don't dislike the Cade option. That's also, by the way, just 31 minutes. He's been in the last 5, 31, 30, 26, 25, and then a 35-minute game. He's averaged basically 34 for the season. Over the last 10, though, he's been at 31. 29 over the last 5. Was banged up in there. So I think this is fair, but potentially a little light. If they manage to keep it close, it probably ends up seeing a few additional minutes trying to close it out. So I can see him having a little bit even additional utility beyond this. It would probably just still put him, around the field's exposure, but the win rates would be a little higher. But yeah, good enough looking option on a 4-gamer. Trade down in the Lehigh Valley area, the home of Tasty Cakes. Podegen Stoner, we know, is out in Colorado. People coming in from all over the country, all over the world. Haven't seen Travis in here. I was going to say varying heights above sea level, including when they're up at the top of cranes. But I don't think Travis is here today. So let's look at some of these lineups, and then we're going to punch out of here, and I'm going to run some updates. DK first. DK with another one of those big $4 games. 101,000 entries. So we're also dealing with very different field sizes across sites, by the way. Forgot to mention that up at the top. DraftKings 104,000 entries tonight. Big tournament. So a lot of Delon Wright. There he is. I was like, wait, he's not. He's supposed to be in 99% of these. He's landed on a lot of these guard spots. Probably in a few of those util spots. So, Wright, Fox, Bam, as predicted in that top lineup, also joined by Jaime Jaquez. Pirtle got into that one with them. There's a Pirtle and Sabonis one. Here's a Bam. All right, so Sabonis, Bam, Wright, but no Fox in that one. I don't want to make this entire thing an exercise in finding lineups that have those guys all in them, but I think it's an interesting enough question. Bam, Fox, Wright. Bam, Fox, Wright. It's got to be one here that's got them all. Fox, Sabonis, Wright. No Bam. Yeah, it might box it out just enough that it doesn't work. Bam, Sabonis, Wright. No Fox. You're going to have to go build that lineup now. Yeah, it looks like that is kind of a odd little decision point. A lot of these are going back and forth between Sabonis and Bam with that Wright and Fox combo in there, and then tons and tons of Jaime Jaquez. A lot of RJ Barrett I've seen as we're scrolling through these. Lot from the Indy-Toronto game, which I love. And obviously a lot of Heat. And then a fair amount of De'Aaron Fox, like we were expecting from those numbers. It's a little silly to talk about where the spends go, just because you could put Delon right here, you could put him here, you could put him here. Like it's very easy to just move him around the board. But you're playing Delon Wright in basically every lineup, and then you've got spend at point guard. So it's like Wright plus an expensive point guard. gets into a lot of these. Brunson Fox right. Fox right. That one's a bonus. Right and Fox again with RJ in there. So you're getting a spendy point guard and the mid-price point guard. A lot of Toronto or Indy going through shooting guard and small forward. But small forward, you're getting also a mix of Detroit, some Knicks in there as well. But a lot of Indy and Toronto going through these two spots. Good amount of Jaime Kez here, but also picking up the oddball DFS shares, obviously. And then Siakam from the Toronto and Indy game. Some oddball pieces and parts otherwise. Some Josh Hart should be in there. I'm sure we'll see more as we go down the board there. Yeah, and some Fontecchio and some Josh Hart seem like the two oddballs either landing at small forward or power forward here. Bam, Sabonis, Pirtle were the top three, and that's kind of how it's working out across center and util. If you didn't put right over here, you've got him here. If you didn't put your expensive guy over here, you got him here. It's basically how that guard spot broke down, almost down the entire thing. It's an oddball Vince one. Fair amount of Zaire Williams, who we did talk about. Landing a lot of them at forward here. Reasonable enough value option, or like mid type option. A lot of Jaquez falling here. If you can get them over here, you get them over here. Same thing. And then spendy utils. Unless you decided for whatever reason to put right in your util spot. I would probably work him in over here so that you could have a flexi kind of a util. Man, I was really hoping we were going to find one of those Sabonis, Bam, Fox, and Wright lineups. Again, that wasn't necessarily the best overall construction. It's quite obviously not the best overall construction given how we're not finding it here. But I just thought it was an interesting little wrinkle to this slate. Being able to book Sabonis in side by side, two top scorers. Oh, wait, here it is. Right, Bam, Fox, Sabonis, just as I was giving up. There's one. So we get Zaire with that. We get Highsmith with that. We get Jaime Kez with that. And G.G. Jackson. That's interesting. 4 Miami, 2 Memphis. I ran all these with 4, by the way. Brings back $67 against your 4. 0.04% probability of winning. 32% probability of cashing, though. It's a good little cash number. Let's see what that looks like. If you were just looking to cash, which again, we don't necessarily play this way, but these are all the top 150 regardless. So these are your top 150 ROI lineups anyway. But if you're just sorting it by cash, this is what it would look like. I'm glad we found one just before I punched it out. So that construction is playable, but it is not our top overall. Anthony Taylor's looking to go to the money dance tonight. I like it. Poe Degen's asking Terry and Gundacker show for baseball. I got to catch up with Gun, man. I really, really do. I haven't talked to him since like the end of baseball season, really. But I mean, if nothing else, I owe him, just give him some of my time. So, he was very, very nice having me on his show a couple times, starting things out, and got some people over here and really helped me. But he's been doing his wrestling thing. I don't know how much DFS he's doing right now, but absolutely, if he wants to, and if he's back on doing it or whatever, or if he wants, to bring things over here and do it in a when he can kind of a role, whatever he wants, I would absolutely be open to that. There's Travis Wyndham, watched Dogman in the theater as well. Love it. Good stuff. I'm just thinking about the the scene where Chris Rock falls out of the sky. And Jay turns, forget what he said. Like, the prophets aren't just falling out of the sky. And Chris Rock falls out of the sky and he's playing a prophet. And Jay turns to this guy. Beautiful, naked, big-titted women don't just fall out of the sky, And he's looking around for her. Trey says Labs Optimal has those 3 currently. Which 3? It was 4. The key was Sabonis, Bam, Fox, and Delon Wright. Are those 4 in it? Probably. They might be. That was the DK side of things. Whoops. Sims brought to you by acemind.io, by the way. Jumping into the FanDuel results. acemind.io, they've got optimizers. I mentioned it the other day, but MMA is live. So we've got PGA, football, basketball. Football's over. But basketball and MMA now. I'm not an MMA guy, so I have no real input on these. There's no upcoming slates either, it doesn't look like. But the sims are there. The optimizer, I assume there's an optimizer for MMA as well. Yep. So these guys have an optimizer. Pretty awesome. You can port things directly over from your optimizer into the sims. It's this easy, right? This is just doing a quick optimization. This is me uploading the projections. Those are saved from my file before. You can go anywhere between 150 and I think 5,000 is the top. Yeah, 5,000 lineups. 5,000 will take a minute. I've seen it get hung up a little bit on 5,000. I typically ask it for like 1,000 at a time, which is perfectly reasonable, but just to just knock out like 200 real quick. Uniques, global exposure limits, projection limits. You can limit by minutes. So tell it I don't want anybody with less than 12 minutes projected, which is kind of a handy shorthand to get into not worrying about where guys are necessarily projected or owned. Just all right, if you got less than 12 minutes, I question what your actual upside is. You can make it that easy. Min salary, randomness, we can just leave those alone. You can pop in player rules, correlation rules, team rules, etc. You just click run. And I'm realizing now that Orlando Robinson is in there with a 0 ownership projection, so I hope this actually works. Yep, there we go. Cool. Every now and again when something gets uploaded with a funky number in it, it'll spit it back out and say you gotta take a look at this. And it's good because it gives you the error message. You just click and it's very easy to figure out. But we're rolling through at pretty good clip here, generating optimized lineups. And the difference here is that this is doing actual optimization via whatever mechanism these guys do it with, versus there's our optimized lineups. And you click right here and you can create an optimized sim. So it's that easy. But yeah, the difference between this and just using the full pool, these are fully optimized lineups where the full pool that you build via the simulator, yeah, that pool built out. If I go back to this, these are the results of 104,000 entries. So if I click here and download all lineups, that'll give me 104,000 unique lineups to choose from, with these being the top 150 by ROI. That's not necessarily a pool of, optimized 104,000 lineups. It's just brute force mashing lineups together, as is my understanding anyway, which is just necessary for the speed. If you run that sim, it's, generating contest entries, running simulation, right? It takes that long to create 100 and change 1,000 lineups versus you just saw it took longer than that to create 200. So there's a difference between optimized lineups and sim pool lineups. And then you take those, you can automatically run it against that sim pool. So once again, acemind.io. Michael Mann movies and shows. Yes. Big Michael Mann fan. Ferrari was really good. And I just clicked on DraftKings again by accident here. Heat. Fantastic movie. I actually haven't watched Tokyo Vice, that HBO show, but Mann is involved with that, I believe. And it's supposed to be really good. Trey, I don't love Evan Fournier. I talked about him a little bit, just kind of jokingly, about like if anybody in the entire league ever had revenge in his heart, it's probably Evan Fournier against this Knicks squad. But that's about it. I've got him at like 20 minutes. Didn't look great in the Sims. If you got him to 30 minutes, he would look fine. But I don't really see it. Maybe if like Grimy was still out, or if he didn't play, or whatever, or if you got an additional hole in that lineup. But right now, the way that they are, I don't really see it. FanDuel side, plenty of right. It's basically right and a star at the point guard, be it Jalen, Tyrese, Darren Fox. And it's basically only those guys. There's a Cade. But take right and then pick your favorite point guard in the other spot. A lot of Toronto or Indy guys across shooting guard, or both. Quentin Grimes, Ben Mathurin, and Emmanuel Quickly. Quentin Grimes obviously not on one of those teams, but Ben Mathurin, IQ, Gary Trent, IQ, Gary Trent, Quickly and Nemhard. More Quickly on the FanDuel board than RJ. We had more RJ on the board on DraftKings. A lot of Akez through the small forward. A lot of Scotty Barnes. A lot of Pascal Siakam on this side. I like that for both of those guys. Center spot, ton of Bam. Bam, 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 all the way down the board. Little sprinklings of Jakob Poeltl in there. A couple of Miles Turners in there. A Nicky Claxton, but primarily Bam at the center spot on the FanDuel slate. He is center only, so no real flexibility. If you want Bam, you got to play him at center on FanDuel, and I think he makes just an absolute ton of sense. You can get a Bam Sabonis going here. Cade, Delon Wright, Gary Trent, Emmanuel Quickly, Ben Mathurin, Akez, DFS, Sabonis, and Bam. Leaves 300 on the table. I might take that 300 and look immediately to upgrade that spot. Finney Smith was coming through the Sims okay, but one of the lower ceilings, and out of everybody in this lineup, that is by far the lowest ceiling guy. Cade, Wright, Gary Trent, IQ, Ben Mathurin, Akez. Yeah, we can find a couple $100 more. Instead of Dorian Finney-Smith at 42, we could go to... I mean, technically, we could just put Haywood Highsmith in that spot. We'd be hitting the Heat pretty hard, but we're hitting the Heat pretty hard in a lot of these lineups. We've got the 300 to spend in that spot, so you could go immediately to $4,500 Haywood Highsmith and solve that problem. They're at very similar sim results. Dorian Finney-Smith, 11.3% winner on FanDuel. Haywood Highsmith, 13% winner on FanDuel. 16 and 15% of the top 150. We're not even really talking about a points per minute upgrade. What we are talking about is a probably more realistic 30 minutes. There's probably somebody else that we could flip to also. Let's see. No. It's really those guys. Maybe Harrison Barnes at 43. Also slots in there. I have to imagine he's going to be lower owned than those guys. Yeah, mid-teens ownership. But yeah, that would be the spot I would look to upgrade in that lineup. Not to get too focused on that one lineup for no real reason. Oh, DJ, and I'm with you. I love watching the making of, behind the scenes, interviews with creative people talking to creative people. But yeah, that one you call out there specifically. I mean, John Carpenter on his own, Kurt Russell on his own, both awesome. But putting them together in those movies that you mentioned there, yeah, pretty damn great. I love Big Trouble in Little China. The movie's fucking great. The Thing. All three of those are on my top X number of movies. I've talked about it before. I have no ability to actually pick favorites. But top X number of movies. Those are all 3 in there. And if you're talking Carpenter, obviously the original Halloween is the top of that list. Anyway, gang, I think that's about it. Not the most mysterious of slates, unless something changes radically between now and lock. But we're 13 minutes from 6 o'clock. We've been going for an hour 45 on a 4-game slate. Not that much more to say about this one, though. So I'm going to punch out. Good luck to you guys out there. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what the slates look like tomorrow. How many games we got tomorrow? Hopefully a good handful. Hopefully some good contests. Let's say. Whoa! All right, that's more than I wanted. I said hopefully a good handful. I didn't mean that many. What is that? 10. That's an 11 gamer. 2 10 o'clock games. I bet they both go with 9 through the. We've got 9 games between 7 and 8 o'clock, and then 2-hour wait till the 2 10 o'clock games. So we'll probably have a 9 gamer tomorrow, and it'll be like a sprint slate between 7 and 8 o'clock. So that'll actually be a lot of fun. I hope they cut it that way. Either way, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about it, unless things go completely haywire. I don't think I'm going to be competing in anything where I could win enough money to just run off and not be here to talk to you guys tomorrow. Probably won't be leaving the house, so I doubt I'll get hit by the proverbial bus. So I think we can expect to be here, gang. With that in mind, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow.